Hey guys, it's mcfixit here. We're going to be working on changing out a hot water heater. This is a pretty simple process, but it is quite involved. You do have water and electric going to this. This is an electric water heater we'll be switching out. And this is in a unique situation. As you look down, they've even got some kind of return air vent pipe across it, so we'll have to take that off. But really the first thing we want to do is go through all the tools and the supplies, and then we will go through the process of getting the old one out and installing the new one. Here are the tools and the supplies that I used for this project. Because we're working with soldering, sweat soldering, you're going to need some kind of blowtorch, whatever kind of piping you have. Most of it's 3/4 inch. You'll need some couplings. This little tool right here just kind of really scrapes out and cleans everything. If you buy this little combo kit, it does come with one little teeny tiny piece of 120 grit sandpaper, some kind of cutter. And so this works from anything from 1/4 inch to 1 1/4 inch. At a 14-inch pipe wrench, you're going to want solder. That's for plumbing, which means it will be lead free, and Flux, and a little brush. This was one little kit. I did use this is gray Teflon tape, works really well. You're going to want some kind of wrenches. Channel locks work really well. I used that for one thing. I did have to cut the old pan out to try to lift it up. That thing was super heavy. And when I did that, I ended up having to cut some PVC, and I used some glue as well. Tape measure is really helpful. One of these non-contact voltage detectors is really helpful as well. Sharpie, a utility knife, and a flathead, and a Phillips. These are all the tools and the supplies that I use. You may need some different ones, but this would allow me to get everything done that I needed to get done in this project. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and turn off the power to this. That is typically found in your breaker box, so go ahead and do that now. So go ahead and open up, and you're going to find your water heater, and this is a double 30. Make sure it is flipped to off. Then we'll go ahead and test it downstairs to make sure it's actually off. Once your power is off, you are going to want to go ahead and test it. This is a non-contact tester. And that definitely shows you it is not. It would beep and it would be red. So I'll find something else to show you that this does work. So back over here is for our washer, and you can tell that is what it would look like if it was hot. And obviously it is not, because it just stays green. You do not want to be electrocuted. So after the power is off, you're going to go ahead and find your power or water supply for the house and turn that off. So you'll need to locate your water main and go ahead and turn it off. Then another thing is this one actually does have valves up top for the cold and the hot side, and I'm going to turn those off as well. That will just stop the water that is up and above to not come back in, and just will really help out. Just make sure it just drains quicker too. Sorry, I couldn't show you actually turning them because they were really stiff, and so you're just going to turn them to the off position on both of them. If it's parallel with the pipe, it's on. If it's at that 90-degree angle, it is off. So that one is off and that one is off. The power is off. So the next thing you're going to do is go ahead and run your drain hose. And so this is just a regular garden hose. You're going to run it to a drain or a sump pump. This has no drain because it's a tri-level, so all it has is that sump pump. So the other end of the hose needs to go down into your sump pump, and that way it can drain properly. Or if you have a drain, this house does not have one, so it does need to go down in the sump pump. So this is the other end of that hose, and you can go ahead and begin to tighten it down just like so. And then go ahead and open up the hose. You can hear it pretty quickly already releasing water. This will take a while. This is 50 gallons through a garden hose, so go ahead and let that sit a while. I'm actually going to go run out and buy the new hot water heater right now. This is a perfect time because it will take a while for that to drain, and it will also kind of cool off as I'm waiting. Make sure to also open up be hot on both upstairs and downstairs if you have it, and just leave that open. That will just help drain all of the excess water out. Even though mine did have that on-off switch, this is also just a good practice to do. So before you run out and buy your hot water heater, you are going to want to go ahead and measure your current one. And so this does have a pan on the bottom, so you want to be inside the pan. This one is 53.5 inches tall. It is 21.25 inches wide, which is important because this has to be a narrow one. A wide one will not fit in this little nook or cranny, whatever you want to call it, for this house. So it's very important that you get the right size. And so we're going to be going with a ream, and it is 20.25, the new one. And I do want to let you know that to be able to work on up here, you got to kind of pick one that's the right height too. So the tall one does work for this application. It is going to sit a little bit taller. It's going to be about 5 inches taller, so you will want to be looking at that as you're working. So now that we know the sizes, we can go ahead and go to the store, pick out an appropriate one. Yours might be different than this, and that's okay. Pick out the one that's going to work best for you. So now that everything's drained out, we are going to test one more time to make sure this does not have any power going to it. Very important you do not electrocute yourself. Both of these are powered. And so the first thing I like to do is go ahead and take off this. So you're going to spin it to where these loosen this up, and then we will spin this piece out so we can have access to it. So they're pretty big, so you can, the screws are, so you can get it pretty good. And then you're going to go ahead and spin it a couple of times, and it came out just like that. Go ahead and put that up and off to the side. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and open up this top piece here. And so there's one Phillips screw in the back of this one. And then you just go ahead and take the little plate completely off. And you can go ahead and disconnect your ground screw, which is right here. And I'm just going to take that all the way off. We're not reusing any of this. And you can go ahead and kind of bend that back. Then we will go ahead and pop out just like that. And just like that. This is where it might get a little tricky. You do need to get these wires kind of separated, and then the ones that are part of the in supply of power, you need to go ahead and gently pull out. The other thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and kind of bend that and put that up kind of out of the way of everything else we're going to do. So we went ahead and took all of the power off that we needed to. Remember, turn off your breaker first. But the next thing we're going to start doing is getting these nuts off. So I'm going to be using a 14-inch plumber's pipe wrench. These things work pretty well. They got a lot of power behind them. And just like that. Also have a bucket nearby just in case anything else, but it should be really good. You shouldn't have any real leakage. And we'll do the same thing on this. Sometimes they are a little bit of a pain to get working properly, but they work really well. Just take your time, make sure you're nice and squared up. There we go. And once you normally get it started, you can finish it by hand. So those are both disconnected just how we want them to be. It didn't really need the bucket, but it is good to have just in case. So I'm going to take both of these off just to give me a little bit of extra room. It's a very tight fitting in here. Perfect, just like that. We'll do the same thing to the other side. And just like that, that's done. So that should give us a little bit better ability to pull this thing out, and it also kind of gives you something to hold on to. Thing I did mention that was kind of unique on this project is this pipe right here. I'm pretty certain this goes up to the stack, the vent stack on the roof. But again, good place to have a bucket. And another thing you're going to want to probably invest in, these are like 10 or 12 bucks. Super helpful. If there's any water, they do go off. I mean, that literally is just the condensation in my hand. So pretty awesome. Can save you a lot of headache. Do replace those about every 6 months, the batteries. So we're going to go ahead and start to take this off. And this is a 5/16. Because without taking this off, this thing's going to be heavy enough already. So this is totally worth the energy and effort to go ahead and remove this part of the pipe, because that's going to be very heavy to lift up. I believe it's about 120 pounds for the new one. And so the old one's going to be a whole lot more heavy than that. Trying to see which way it's going to let me twist and pull this. There it goes, it's starting to disconnect. Get that bucket ready. And there definitely was a little bit of water in that. This has this pipe here. I am going to have to go ahead and cut it. So this is just a PVC cutter. And that should give me a little bit of extra room. And there is just a touch of water in here that you will want to make sure you get up. I'm probably going to go ahead and just have to get a new one of these. So I am just going to go ahead and take this off. Perfect. That will help me a little bit. And it's for my softener right here, this piece. But this little trap thing does help a lot. Get some of that excess water down there. And I'm probably going to try to spin it around. So I thought I would be able to get this thing past, but it is too wide. So I'm going to go ahead. I can kind of see back in there. So I'm going to cut a bigger hole than what it is. And we're going to have to just do some drywalling, which was not my intention when I first did this project, but things do happen and you just kind of got to go with it, especially when you're doing things at home. So that should give us access to be able to cut this pipe, which is what I need. And then I probably will actually put this on correctly because obviously it wasn't before. So I will need to cut it and leave myself enough room to be able to do that. So you're going to need PVC cutters. And this is kind of at a weird angle, so probably will not be able to show you with the camera. So just like that, I was able to cut it off. It's not a super clean cut. It did crack a little bit. That's okay. I'm going to replace that whole piece coming out. And now we should be able to easily pull it on out. And it is starting to leak a little bit. So now that that's cut, we should be able to begin to pull it out. Again, that was not my preferred method, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do in these projects. And that right there got it out of that hole. And it is starting to, that rust spot on the bottom, leak a little bit more. So we'll go ahead and get the dolly and take it on outside. So I went ahead and painted and cleaned up the area nice and well. We're going to go ahead and put down that new pan, just like so. That will allow us to have the ability to put the new hot water heater right there on top of it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut on the bottom. You'll see a, if you have the same model, you'll see a black line. And so you can just cut right on there. And on my way home, it was snowing a little bit. So this box is pretty wet. As you see, it's just kind of tearing instead of cutting. So that can happen. But the beautiful thing about cutting it right down here is we should be able to lift this off just like so, especially if you have a tall enough ceiling, which I really don't. So I'm probably gonna have to do an additional cut here. But either recycle this or use it for something else. I do a lot of projects outside. You can look at the rest of my channel, and I do like to save a lot of cardboard like this because it can be very beneficial. And just like that, the new one is ready to rock and roll. And you can tell it's a little bit taller than the last one, but that's okay. We have already kind of adjusted for that. So go ahead and scoot the rest of the stuff out of the way. And we'll start kind of getting it back to where it needs to go. So go ahead and start working it back into place. Go ahead and get that cardboard out of there. So what we're going to do is we're going to end up putting this on there, get it nice and snug, and figure out how high we need to cut. Then we will go ahead and put on some couplings and solder both sides of that. The first thing you're going to do is go ahead and clean out both sides. So this tool works really well, just getting all the junk out of it. And so you get a nice, clean, smooth finish. I would highly invest in one of these if you're doing any bit of copper work, because it does just do really well cleaning everything out. And we'll go ahead and grab some Teflon tape. I am going to scoot this out an inch or two. It is a lot lighter than it was before. And we'll go ahead and grab some Teflon tape. I am going to scoot this out an inch or two. It is a lot lighter than it was before. And we're going to just go ahead and, this is that gray Teflon tape. I like this stuff a little bit better. It's a little, I'm going to take this off so I can get around it too. Just a little higher quality than the white. And you're going to go around 4 or 5 times, just covering all the threads nice and neat. And you're going to go start kind of from the top and work your way down to where you've covered all the threads. And then you just kind of pull it tight and it kind of locks it in place. Same thing for this side. Go ahead and get it started. And this does come with the dielectric nipples already attached, factory install, which is nice. If not, if you're going from copper down to this, you are going to want to add these in. They're not that expensive. I think they were around $4 to $8. And so, and then we'll just pull that tight, just like so. And then we'll go ahead and kind of reinstall these. Do not get a wrench on it yet. You are just going to want to get them nice and started, making sure you are perfectly lined up. So that one's pretty much hand tight on that one. Same thing for this side. Just go ahead and get it pretty much hand tight. So go ahead and get those hand tight, and then we're going to tighten them down with the wrench just a little bit more. Whoever did this solder job the last time really soldered it. That sweat solder job, that's all the way down on both sides. I'm going to try to do a little bit better job than that. I'm not the best at it, but we'll make it happen. And because there's nothing in this tank, it does move quite easy when you're tightening them down. You don't have to kill it. You're going to have lots of pressure anyways when you're using a wrench this big. So there you go. Those are both done how I want them to be. Then we're just going to kind of move this almost right next to it to where we can get a good spot where we have lots. So one other thing to remember, this is your hot side, and so I'm just going to write an H on it, and this is your cold side. I've actually already done that up here. I did that off camera, so I do apologize. But the hot and the cold are actually written on the back side, so it is a little hard to tell from this angle. Then you're going to go ahead and guesstimate where you want these copper pieces to go. I want enough room to really be able to make sure it is good. So we'll kind of try to do about the same side on both of them, but let's just guess right there. And right there. Same thing on this side. And these do have the ability to move up and down a little bit, so that's good. And then you're going to go ahead and take your cutter, and I'm going to move this away from each other so I can easily access it. And so you loosen it up with your cutter till you get the right spot, then you tighten it down. And you just start going around in a circle. I have to move it just a little more. They make all different types of cutters. I've had this one for a long time, so that's the one I'm using today. It does take some revolutions around. And I did jump this one just a little bit. I wasn't paying enough attention, I guess. And it did jump down a little, so I definitely will edit that on the other one. And that right there, clean cut, just like what we want. I do want to make sure I'm nice and close for where this needs to go. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it back out a little bit, and then tighten it back down right where I want it, and then I will go ahead and scoot this back out of the way. And just like that, it's off. Then we're going to go ahead and back it off a couple of turns. Go ahead and get this one right where we want it. I'm going to have to move this again just to give myself some room. In these tight locations, you do have some issues with, oh, I made that too low. It's okay though. I'll just have to edit up the other one. As long as it matches, that's all that matters. Between the two, they should be just a little bit of a gap. And just like that, that one is off. Fantastic. So I'm going to scoot this one back as well, just to make sure I get myself on a good spot for this. Okay, that is just what we want it to be. So there's really two options. You can use what they call a terry cloth or one of these tools. I really like this one, and it just goes in and it cleans it up really, really nice. You're going to want to go to the big side, which is the 3/4, and I like to go the same direction the whole time. And you'll see it looks almost brand new, which is exactly what you want. Same thing with this. Even though it's almost 20 years old, that copper looks brand spanking new. Same thing here. Push it in, twist it around. One thing I will say, they make a kind of a cheaper version of this. This one's a Husky one. The cheaper version does not have this little plate on it, and you can mess up what direction you go in these. If you use it a lot, it will wear out the bristles. So I do like this, that it's always going the same way, and I always just turn it to the right. It looks really good. I am going to get a towel to just wipe it off. There's just a little rag I have, making sure all that looks good. But yeah, that looks like brand new copper. Next thing you're going to do is go ahead and get your cup link and take it in, turn it to the right as well, and that inside should come nice and clean. I do this even though this is a new cup link. I just really want to make sure I am getting the best fit that I possibly can. So just like that, all done. The next thing you're going to get out is your Flux. And so it sometimes gets a little crazy. Make sure you have water soluble, and all this should be always lead free, and so you're just kind of painting it lightly, doing a little Bob Ross. You don't have to go crazy. You just want a nice coat all the way around. All the way around. This will help draw up the solder, so when you kind of put that on, it will really help out and draw that solder up. It's a little different than welding or plastic welding. If you watched any of my videos on that, it's a little different concept. So now then you can go ahead and close that up. I do like to keep the brush that I have in a little Ziploc bag. Beautiful frozen one from forever ago. Maybe it's the first time in forever, I don't know. And then the next thing is to really get this thing in place, and so I'll try not to kick the camera too many times, but it is important that you get it right where it's supposed to be. So it may take a little bit of persuasion to get it exactly where you want it to go. Like I said, this will have just a touch of movement back and forth, but that's okay. So you want to make sure you're nice and snug all the way around. The next thing you're going to get out is your solder. So this is a lead-free solder, and I kind of do a little bit of a hook on it, if you think of like a J, or if you're going fishing, and that will allow us to get on there and be able to get it down in there. You want to keep your hand kind of far away from it as well, because you are going to be using a blowtorch. So I'm going to go ahead and apply the heat to this, and have the other side ready to rock and roll. So that top one is done. This is a damp cloth. Be careful. It is going to be very hot, but you can knock some of that stuff off if there's anything on it. So I'm going to go ahead and do the bottom section now. And go ahead and turn off your flame. Yes, it is very hot. This one should be pretty cool by now. So that right there did all that I needed it to do to be able to seal up both of those. So now we're going to go ahead and go back into the crawl space and turn on the water to the house. And then turning back on your water main. So now that the water is on, we're going to go ahead and open up the cold. And I just crack it, checking for any kind of leaks. And this thing will take a while to fill. I am gonna go ahead and open up the hot as well, because I have a bathroom sink that's open as well. We have no power on. See, the power is still over here. It is not on at all. This is just filling up the tank. Checking for leaks anywhere in your whole system is really important right now, making sure you did everything correctly. If it's leaking, turn off the water here real quick first, and then go back to your main. So now that we have the top done, we don't have any of the electric plugged in yet, but we're going to go ahead and plug this in. So this has a nice little rubber gasket. I'm just going to use the original. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and take and begin to put this on. You're going to put the gasket and then this little nut. There is not a lot of room for me to do this. And I did accidentally spill a little bit of water. You can see that there's some water in the base of this pan. Gonna get a pair of pliers. Remember, this is plastic. It's just hard for me to grab onto, and it's pretty brittle plastic, so remember, you don't gotta kill it. And just like that, that's taken care of. Now, if you do remember, I did cut it. So we are going to come back and fix where I cut it. And because this is not really a pressured line, I'm not even going to get out the prime. I'm just going to glue it. So I'm going all the way down and around on both sides. And same thing here, just around it. This will be more than enough. And just like that, that part is done. I am going to make sure I get that black hose and put that black hose back in. This goes for our water softener. So now that we have down there all done, we got that pipe reinstalled into the drain basin. We're going to go ahead and work on the electric. Go ahead and test it. Make sure you're good. That may beep in a minute. We're going to go ahead and pull off this screw. Don't drop it down in. That's kind of easy to do. Slide it off to the side. So we're going to go ahead and take these other two screws off as well, because we do have to get this locking nut on here to get it to do what it's supposed to. And it's going to be easier than trying to feed this through. At least I think it is. We'll find out here in a second. So that's the two screws on the top. Don't lose them. And hopefully the plate just pops off like it just did. And then we'll go ahead and, this is for that underside. We'll go ahead and put these through. Then get that nut on there and lock that into place. I do like them showing through. So you want it to where you have access to both screws while it's still really tight. And I'm going to go ahead and tighten these down, making sure that there is enough of the wire covering underneath. You can see it right down here. It's orange. I'll show you in a second for a little better view. That little jacket is really important, that you have a little bit sticking down below. And the rest is right here and tightened in, just like that. You can go ahead and grab your ground. Might be easier doing this one now than later. Sometimes it's easier to just grab the ground screw and get it all of the way out. And just kind of bring your ground cable to where it needs to, that wire. Just like that. Just make sure you're not stripping it, which is kind of easy to do because of the angle that it presents itself. So you can go ahead and grab your pliers and just kind of bend that down. That right there will let you get a good ground. Make that nice and tight, and then we can go ahead and put back in these other two screws. I'm just going to start the back one and then go up to the front one. Just like so. And just like so. Again, you still have access to these to be able to take this off in the future. That's really helpful. So the red and the white will go together, and the black and the black will go together. And so we'll go ahead and start spinning those on. You're going to want those really nice and tight. So it should start to kind of twist the wire too. And then we will give it a good solid yank, making sure neither of the wires are coming out of that. We're going to do the same thing for the black wires. And then we got to push these down in this little cavity here. I don't know if I tested this one, so here's my test for it. If I didn't, you can always double check. But so this little ground wire does have a little spot for that. And then you kind of, I may have to bend that over just a smidgen. Just like that. Because this little plate goes down and under. And then your screw goes in right there. Just like so. We're going to go ahead and turn on the power for this machine, make sure everything is properly done before you ever turn back on the power. And I'll also have this little guy handy too, so we'll go ahead and flip that breaker back on. So go ahead and come back to your breaker box and go ahead and flip it back on. So that breaker is back on. You can tell it is definitely hot now, and so it will take a little bit of time to heat all of this water up. So here's our test. We're going to let some water run for a while. And then go ahead and feel it. And actually, it already feels pretty warm. And you can always go back to the cold, and that's cold because it's in Ohio and it's the winter time. And that's nice and warm. You can always adjust inside the top part of your hot water heater how hot you want it to be. I always set mine around 125 degrees. That way nobody gets burnt. But that feels really good and warm and works really well. But I hope this was helpful. Please like, subscribe, comment if you haven't done so already. I hope this does help you put in your own hot water heater and save a whole lot of money. This one again was a little difficult because of the spacing issues, but overall these are pretty simple machines. Make sure to follow all of your building codes, and please like, subscribe, comment if you do have any questions.